Hello, good morning, everyone. I am Nathan, lead game designer for Quasi Real Publishing. I imagine anyone who jumps in knows me, but just in case, I am here today to give some really exciting updates about the playtest content that we've got coming up for MythCraft. So, I'm going to go through the various hello, how's it going? I'm going to go through the various things that we've got coming up over the next few months. Feel free to stop me and ask questions about Mythcraft or about specific playtest releases that we have coming up. One of them is actually releasing today, so I'm really excited to share that. Let's jump in. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me. Um, all right, here we go. So we've got our roadmap here. Um, let's go ahead and open the first seal. There we go. All right, so this is all one of these days I'm going to get this down. February 21st. That's today. We are releasing playtesting content for Anera before the first Super Eon. That is our that's one of our campaign settings. It's still on Anera, the official Mythcraft campaign setting, but it's set thousands of years before our main setting. So, or before our fantasy setting, I should say. I am gonna drop a link in chat here. There you go. That'll take you to all of our playtest content that we're excited to present to you. So this is like, imagine basically Mesopotamia but with dinosaurs. That's kind of the vibe for this campaign or this setting release. There is a campaign that I'm working on that takes place in this setting. We'll get to that in just a minute. In regards to playtesting and how playtesting is going to work moving forward, I haven't posted it yet, but we'll get a Google form set up so that after you have played a session, you can go on and just fill out an entry to the Google form, specify which playtest you've done. So Anera before in this case, or whatever other playtest you might be exploring. So you'll be able to fill out what you've done, if you're a player, what character options you used and what you thought of them, what the balance was. If you felt that you were undertuned or overtuned, let us know. And then same if you're a Mythcrafter or a game master, let us know what monsters you used, what kind of new mechanics you used if we introduce those kinds of things. So like, we're not there yet, but with Veil of the Eternal Night, the Psyche talents, the sanity, fear and sanity system that we're working on, new mechanics like that. Let us know your experience with them, how your players seemed to react to them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's starting today with Anera before the first Super Eon. Moving down to March, we've got part 2 of the Cloven Lands, which is our first campaign that we're releasing. So part 1 has been out for a few months. People have had a chance to play through it, and part 2 is going to release early March, and so that'll give you the next leg of the journey. That'll be roughly levels 4 through 10 or 11. So a good chunk of content there. Hello, welcome, Java, Brandon, John. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening in. John, this is just for Mythcraft, unless I say otherwise. So I will specifically call out 5th edition or another game system if we're bringing it to multiple systems. But the base assumption is that this is just for Mythcraft. Hey Solo, thanks for joining us. Moving down after the Cloven Lands Part 2 releases, we've got Part 1 of Kings of Tyranny. This is the first campaign that details some of the events of the Dinosaur Wars. The Dinosaur Wars is one of the major events of Anera before, of the first Super Eon campaign setting. The Kings of Tyranny will go level 1 to 15 in MythCraft. There will be other campaigns that detail the rest of the Dinosaur Wars in different fashion. Part 1 of Kings of Tyranny goes level 1 to level 3 or 4. So it's just between like a quarter and a third of the entire campaign. So that's what we've got coming up today again, and then in March. Yeah, again, there aren't plans at present to translate any of this into 5th edition, but we will get to some 5e content here with upcoming Veil of the Eternal Night stuff. Let me move myself over here and open this up. All right, lots of stuff coming up in April and in May. In April, and this one is 5th edition as well as MythCraft. So this will be for both. We've got part 1 of Harker's Guide to Vampire Hunting. This is the first part of our Veil of the Eternal Night release. And so this is going to, obviously, Harker's Guide is kind of the player-facing book out of the 3 books for Veil of the Eternal Night. So it's got your lineages, your class options, your spells, your talents, feats if it's 5th edition. Yeah, so it's got a lot of different player-facing content. It's also got kind of an extended bestiary. So in 5th edition terms, if you've got like Volo's Guide to Monsters or Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, it kind of splits between player and Dungeon Master kind of content. So Harkers is a little bit that way too. Let me see. So because Harkers has a lot of content going on in it, we've broken it down into 3 parts. Part 1 is going to include all of the subclasses, but it's not going to include any of the full new classes. So Hellcrafter and Vampire and Lycanthrope, those like complete classes, those are going to come at a later point. We need a little bit more time to let those cook. It's also going to include a good chunk of Psyche talents to start playing around with those. A chunk of magic options, spells in the different sources of magic, and about a quarter of the new monsters that we're going to release. Love how much you're working on at once. Entries in the Mythcrafter's Guide marked as campaign module. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I'm really excited to get to those. A lot of those campaign modules that are marked in the Mythcrafter's Guide are they're not like actively in development right now. They're just like ideas that we have that we know we want to bring and develop at some point. So again, like the Kings of Tyranny, that is getting rolled out now. So really excited for that. Does Veil of the Eternal Night take place on Anera or an original or vague campaign setting? It does take place on Anera. If you give me a second, I'll actually pop a map up. Let me I'm gonna come back. Sorry, SW Guy Gardner. I'll come back to that question in just a minute. I'm gonna get through April and May, and then I'll pull up a map of Anera and do some highlighting of where different things take place. So again, Harker's Guide is character options, some monsters. It's not the whole thing. We're rolling it out in 3 different installments to get playtesting feedback for it. After that is the Cloven Lands Part 3, and this is the very end of the Cloven Lands campaign. So it is level 10 or 11 through level 15. It's going to be the conclusion of everything that like all the dominoes that you set up in parts 1 and 2 are going to fall in part 3. Then just a couple days after that, we've got Soliloquy of Annihilation teaser. So this isn't going to be like the whole campaign module, but this is going to be a few levels worth of content for our first Veil of the Eternal Night campaign. So there's Soliloquy of Annihilation, which is level 1 to 15 in Mythcraft or 10 in D&D. And then there's Daughter of the Shadows, which is level 16 to 30 in Mythcraft, and levels 11 to 20 in D&D. So when Harkers is rolled, is it more testing? Yeah, it's testing new character options, testing new monsters. So exactly, you would you would play some one shots with the new one shots or micro campaigns, however you want to do that. Just use the characters in whatever capacity you want. We may throw out some like example scenarios to use. I don't have any of those like drafted right now, but yeah, like that kind of thing. Run run level 2 or 3 characters through like a werewolf dungeon kind of thing, and just see how it all plays out, and let us know like how your character options work out, that kind of stuff. End of April, we've got the rest of Kings of Tyranny. So, back at the very beginning of, or mid-March, we've got like the first part. Kings of Tyranny, we've got the rest of it. So level 5 through 15. So a big, big chunk of content there to play through. And in May, mid-May, we've got part 2 of Harker's Guide to Vampire Hunting. That is going to include all of the full new classes. So in Mythcraft exclusively, you're going to get the Hellcrafter, and then in both Mythcraft and 5th edition, you're going to get the the Lycanthrope and the Vampire. And you've seen me do some design work with both of those, so I think those will be really exciting to play through. We'll have the rest of the Psyche talents, the rest of the magic options for the 5 sources if you're playing in Anera, and for just like magic if you're playing in 5th edition. We're going to have some of the artifacts ready to playtest, the legacy artifacts. So I did a design stream for one of these for the Sovereign's Orb, the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. And there's another one available in the free demo on our Veil of the Eternal Night Kickstarter. That's Blessed Wind. That's a sword that you can telepathically command to fight on your behalf. So we're going to have half of those artifacts ready to playtest. We're going to have specialization talents, or if you're playing 5th edition, we're going to have feats, character customization options outside of just your class advancement. And we're going to have another quarter of monsters. So at this point, you'll see basically all of the character options except for about half of the artifacts that we'll still be working on, and you'll see about half total of all of the different monsters that we're developing. Now, these monsters are not the mythic boss monsters. Those are going to be in the campaign modules, not in Harkers. All right, so that's February, March, April, and May. I'm going to take a second and pull up the map of Anera to talk through that a little bit. We'll get into June and July here in a minute, but if anyone has more questions about like the settings or specific character options, what playtesting should look like, any of that, feel free to type those out while I grab these maps here. Oh wait, you know what? It'll be easier if I do this as a screen share. Already looking at the new playtest content. Awesome. I did. Justin, if you look at other videos in our YouTube channel, you can find me doing a design stream where I go from like very base concept to a fairly well fleshed out like outline of what the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch is able to do. These are it was funny. I ended up tweeting the Habsburgs. I didn't know any of the Habsburgs were still around, but I sent them a tweet. They never responded. But yeah, trying to figure out what the Holy Hand Grenade should do, what kind of powers it should have. Hello, Kestrel, Pierre, thanks for joining us. Aurora, thank you for looking at playtest content. I'm excited to hear more about what you think about it. If you're just now joining, you can see the playtest schedule over here. I'll get to June and July here in just a second, but I'm gonna pull up some maps of Anera real quick. To who was it? It was Guy Gardner who was asking about this. Maybe find a good map. Cloven Lands and Kings of Tyranny, eventually they will be made available in print. That's not something that we're looking at doing quite yet, but right now they're going to be available in like wiki entry format for playtesting, and then once those are refined a little bit, then we will release them as PDFs. Those will be free for people that backed our first Kickstarter. That's like the last product that we're still rolling out for our first Kickstarter. Otherwise, they will stay free in a wiki format, and they will be available to buy as PDFs on like our website, on Drive-Thru RPG, that kind of stuff. Okay, here we go. Thanks for bearing with me. I've got the maps here. Oh, perfect, Pierre. Glad to hear that. Um, good timing. I'm really excited with the work we've done on Cloven Lands Part 2. Alright, let's see. Display capture. Alright, here we go. Get to where you can still see my face. There we go. Okay, and perfect. Yep. Okay, so the campaign modules that we're rolling out include, let me actually move myself over here. Wow, whole new perspective. Okay, so the Cloven Lands, like 3 guesses as to where the Cloven Lands happens. It's where there's a big cleft in the land. So the Cloven Lands focuses on the city-state of Bridgemore, here straddling this massive canyon. It also spreads out into Nalathesh and Kendaria, which are the 2 nations that sandwich Bridgemore. So Cloven Lands, the whole thing, parts 1 through 3, are gonna go, as far as... I think you guys can see my cursor, right? Looks like it's showing up. As far as like the capital of Nalathesh, which is going to be over in this area, and the capital of Kendaria, which will be up past the old forest here. Exploring the forest, exploring the desert, exploring the mystery flesh pit, and of course working on smoothing out Bridgemore politics and keeping everyone from cutting each other's throats. It's very like Game of Thronesy. It's like political intrigue on top of fantasy adventure. So in addition to going on quests for people, like the quests are important, but perhaps even more important is which quests you choose to do, which people you choose to go on quests for. So if you go on a quest for the Queen of Kendaria, then the God King of Nalathesh might not be too happy and might choose not to work with you. So figuring out how to manage all of that. So that is, let me turn this off for a second. That didn't do anything. There we go. So that is the, that's the Cloven Lands setting. So Anera is the world. Gathandia is the continent. And, Bridgemore, Nalathesh, and Kendaria is where the Cloven Lands happens. If you go, yes, there will be a lot of like regional maps here of Bridgemore, of the different like major cities and close-ups of the region. This is obviously just like mostly the natural world, and a couple, like the bridge of Bridgemore was big enough to just put on there. So there's a couple landmarks on this map, but it's mostly just like the names of nations. But yeah, there'll be a lot more detailed maps. That's part of the module that we're rolling out. So take a horse and buggy and travel for a couple months north, and you come to the region of Norspina. This is this whole chunk of land, the north of the Great Chasm, and Norspina is this like Arctic and more northern plains area, the forest, the spine of the world here, or at least this portion of it, this portion of the mountains here. This is where Veil of the Eternal Night primarily takes place. So Dirk is one of the major. I'd say Dirk, Bishal, and Nord are probably the three central nations to Veil of the Eternal Night. But you could go as far north as Yodvin. You might go south and interact with Forsten, Les Mishan, Candif, Betal. You might, yeah, do some traveling around. But Nord, Bishal, and Dirk, and Kess, of course, also very important to the region. So Kess is the kingdom where Lorvin is. Lorvin is the like Paris-inspired city that Pelorva rules. So this is the region where Cloven Lands, or I'm sorry, where Veil of the Eternal Night will be taking place. I intend to have a couple options if you played Cloven Lands and want to transition into Veil of the Eternal Night. I have a couple options for like your heroes coming out of retirement or sending their children to go on their own adventures, like the next generation of heroes, the Young Avengers. Young Avengers versus Dracula. I think Dracula would win. I don't think they're experienced enough. Anyway, so there's geographically they're on a similar place. There are already a couple references to Veil of the Eternal Night in the Cloven Lands, so there's definitely some overlap there. Veil of the Eternal Night also includes some stuff with planes and planar travel, but I don't have maps of that, so I'm not going to get into it right now. The other map I want to show real quick is the first Super Eon, which has a different map. This is Telgaea. This is like Pangea. It's fantasy Pangea. It's a giant supercontinent that eventually breaks apart into Githandia and some of the other continents that we haven't really explored yet with that are contemporaneous with Githandia on Anera. I mean, like if you look here, this giant chasm is the same as this chasm, right? It's just zoomed out because it's a giant supercontinent. There's a couple different nations. If you look down here at Aten, for example, that exist in both settings. So Aten is like one of those ancient kingdoms that's been around for a very long time. There's Nalathesh and Kindaria. Anjarn is on both. Sozine, Tafunga, these are nations that shift and change around that were originally Kozia. So lots of different things there. But then if you zoom out, you can see, like, this is the equator here. So it's just a huge supercontinent. The Dinosaur Wars primarily focuses on Brazodir and Gilgalon, which are basically fantasy Assyria and fantasy Babylon. That's kind of how I've been thinking about it as I've been building it out. Guy Gardner, thank you. I appreciate that. I really enjoyed figuring out this timeline and figuring out how all of these work together. So which nations are still around on Ansera, and which nations have either collapsed or are otherwise no longer around, been conquered or broken apart from other nations. Like all of that kind of grand time macro timeline kind of stuff has been really fun. So you'll see when we roll out part one of Kings of Tyranny that it opens with Brazodir attacking a small village in Gilgalon, and that's the catalyst for the adventurers to become heroes, go to Gilgalon, and make their case for like what happened, to warn everyone that the Assyrian dinosaur army is coming and attacking, and that they've got to rally their forces, prepare defenses, and that'll lead them to try to make allies with some of these other nations that border on Brazodir, see if they're able to successfully make alliances, and then take the fight back to the God King of Brazodir and his dinosaur army. So that's the beginning of the Dinosaur Wars. That's the Kings of Tyranny campaign. Yeah, so again, this is Ansera thousands of years ago, and then this is Ansera in like the fantasy present day, and eventually we'll get to futuristic Anseras, but we're not there yet. Thanks for the commitment, Pixelgeist. My voice is like down to normal now. I'm not up in the chipmunk range anymore. Um, all right, let's see. Turn that off. And let's get back to the timeline here. All right. So coming up last is June. Well, not last. Last for this announcement. Last for now. There's a lot more to come. Um, we've got a few new things coming up in June and July. So we've got playtesting for the entirety of Soliloquy of Annihilation. Again, this is level 1 to mid level, or mid maximum. Level 10 if you're 5th edition, level 15 if you're MythCraft. For part 1 of Veil of the Eternal Night. So this is the Dracula campaign. This is taking trying to take the fight to Dracula and release his iron grip on Norspina. After that is playtesting for the entirety of Harker's Guide to Vampire Hunting. This one isn't going to be as big as the Part 2 rollout, so Part 2 of Harkers is going to have probably the largest chunk of new player options. Part 3 is just going to be the new, the rest of the artifacts and the rest of the monsters and revisions to anything that we have tweaked or changed in previous playtests. So if a class track is like too weak or too powerful, we'll release like an updated version in part 3. And again, that's early June and mid June for those two releases. And then mid July, we've got Daughter of the Shadows, and this is the remainder of Veil of the Eternal Night. This is level 16 to 30 or 11 to 20, depending on your game system. And this is again, you've made decisions in Soliloquy of Annihilation. You've defeated villains. You've interacted with different creatures and different like plot elements in different ways, and the effect, the cascading like result of all of those decisions comes to bear in Daughter of the Shadows. You'll face off with Pelorva. You'll explore the Parisian city of Lorvin. All of that is going to happen in Daughter of the Shadows, so mid-July for that. Also, we're going to announce our next quasi-real publishing project in somewhere in June or July. So we don't have an exact release date for, or we don't have an exact announcement date for our next project, but we will have something to look forward to somewhere in those summer months. So that's it. That's what we've got coming up. Where Where should I put myself? I'm gonna... Woo. There we go. Okay. This is our timeline. If anyone has any questions about playtest content, about setting content, I'd love to answer any of that. A reminder, and I will put the link in chat again, the playtest content for Anera before the first Super Eon. Again, this is not a campaign. This is our new setting. This is the dinosaurs, the new like ancient class options, more information about Telgaea, that supercontinent that I showed you earlier. All of that is going to be available there in that link in the chat. I'll hang out for a couple minutes in case anyone has questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to try to stay out of the way of all of the words here. I saw some people have already started looking at the Anera before playtest content, so I'm really excited for that. Bottom of the Great Chasm has a river running through it, but is otherwise solid ground. Kind of like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. But obviously, unlike the Grand Canyon, the mines in the Great Chasm reveal produce Avadrium and mithril and other like magical metals that I jumping from like Bridgemore, for example, I don't think they would. I think that's too far of a jump. Like hitting the river would still just feel like hitting cement at such a great distance. So I would not recommend jumping into the Great Chasm. Although in like a slightly more futuristic Anera, like a more modern Anera, bungee jumping off of Bridgemore, I'm sure would be a huge tourist attraction. That would be. I've been to the Grand Canyon many times, and I can't say I've ever seen bungee jumping there. Avadrium, Arcanium, and Primor. So those are different like magical substances. Think of them like vibranium, where they can kind of, sort of do anything. Like, someone who is a lot more in-depth with Marvel Comics could probably explain exactly what vibranium can and can't do. I'm a big Marvel fan, but I haven't gone through and, like, read their backlog of comics. I've read some comics, and I'm mainly, like, caught up on all things MCU-related. As far as I can tell, vibranium is, like, a pseudo-metallic energy that you can mix with like steel to make a strong vibranium alloy, or you can mix with fabric to make really tough, like indestructible, like metallic, like Kevlar thread kind of fabric. So Avadrium, Primor, Arcanium, they're kind of like that. We don't have like really in-depth, this is what they can do, this is what they can't do, like guides right now. That's something we'll probably roll out like when it becomes really relevant for a campaign. But basically, like, magic items might be made out of them. Certain monsters, like the Trench Abomination or the Trench Weirdling, creatures that are Avadri, might be made of Avadrium. Or a mythcrafter or a game master might say that they're might say that an Avadri monster has damage reduction, but an Avadrian weapon could like override that damage reduction, like that kind of interplay. So right now it's mainly up to the mythcrafter to figure out, but that is something that I would like to develop more at some point. Yeah, for sure. I'd with Primor and Arcanium specifically, there's nothing canon here yet, but I'd like to do something with all of the 5 sources and have that same rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock dynamic that we have with the 5 sources, and do that with like metal alloys. So, an Arcanium shield might shatter a Primor spear. A Primor spear might pierce a an Occultium shield, or whatever that looks like. I'm not sure if that makes sense for all of the sources, though. That's my only hesitation there. Like, occult and divine being metals doesn't make as much sense, as opposed. I mean, counterpoint. I'm just kind of arguing with myself now. Um, the divine source has a ritual where you can make a holy weapon. So you would take mundane metal and infuse divine power into it. So Arcanium and Primor, and maybe Avadrium is like that with psionic kind of energy. Yeah, Mithril and Adamantium could potentially belong to the other sources. I hadn't intended that from the offset, but that could work. Yeah, adamantine, right? Adamantium is another Marvel thing. Um, yeah, so I mean, we'll have those more fleshed out in future supplements at some point, but right now, like, magical metals are largely up to Mythcrafter adjudication, kind of how they manifest. Yeah, Michael, finding time to play is always the hardest part. Scheduling is the real BBEG. Pierre, that's very astute. In future eons, will magic have the same power, or will it even exist? In the first super eon, only psionic magic exists. And you can go to the like playtest link and read lore that explains why psionic magic exists and why the other magic sources don't exist yet. Um, in future eons, you will see magic change. The way magic works will change. Divine magic specifically changes dramatically. I'm not going to give details yet. We have some really cool ideas there, but I'm going to wait until we're closer to releasing like one of those future eons before I say more on that. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff there too, Guy Gardner. That kind of overlaps with how and why divine magic really changes dramatically. Well, if you have another question, feel free to ask. I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the timeline again, and then if there aren't any other questions at that point, then I think we'll call it a wrap. So, again, starting today, we've got and Sarah before we've got dinosaurs, a lot of dinosaurs. We've got kaijin. I forgot to mention those with the first Super Yon. Kaijin are your non-copyright Godzillas and King Kongs, like massive, massive monsters. Lots of different really cool ones there, so check those out. Um, we've got we've got a lot of really cool monsters. We've got some new character options, and then in March, beginning of March, we've got another chunk of the Cloven Lands that we're rolling out, and we've got part one of Kings of Tyranny. In April, we've got the beginnings of Veil of the Eternal Night. We've got our first character options for fighting vampires, for psyche talents. We've got some new monsters. Cloven Lands Part 3 is going to come out after that, followed by a teaser for Soliloquy of Annihilation, just the first couple levels there. Um, Kings of Tyranny, the rest of that is going to come out mid-April. Um, Mid-May, we're going to see a big release for Harker's Guide to Vampire Hunting. We're going to see basically the rest of your character options and some more monsters. In June, the entire Soliloquy of Annihilation campaign, and the rest of the character options and monsters for Veil of the Eternal Night. And finally, in July, we've got the Daughter of the Shadows campaign that we're going to roll out, and another project to be announced. So that's where we're at. Amazing. Thank you all so much for joining me. Let's see, we've got a lot of stuff coming up over the next few days. We've got a little over a week left for our Veil of the Eternal Night Kickstarter. So obviously I mentioned a lot of content related to Veil of the Eternal Night. We've still got about 8 days to go on our campaign, so let's see if we can get those last few character options. Let's see what other stretch goals we can unlock. We're very close to hitting the 380k stretch goal. Once we hit that, then I will do another legacy artifact design, and the one that I design on stream is going to be determined by a popular vote. So I'm really excited to see what you all pick out of the options that I throw your way. That's about it. Yeah, keep checking our schedule. I'll be streaming Castlevania later tonight. We've got some other streams going on over the next few days as well. So I will see you all around. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.